A trend I dislike that's becoming very common across gaming is this over focus of details. Small things that don't really matter. You see this most commonly in Rockstar games. Not really the early games like the PS2 GTA games, for example, but Red Dead Redemption 2 is the first one I would say they went all in. This chase for realism to bait out Twitter clips that impress the lowest of the low. People that don't really enjoy video games as a medium. Crimson Desert is a game that falls into this category. So much of the game is rooted in this chase for realism and being dragged out. I remember a decade ago, give or take a few years I guess, where games started doing this war table mechanic. Dragon Age Inquisition, World of Warcraft, both had this system in place where you would send off NPCs for real-time missions. When the timer runs out, you got rewards. I remember this mechanic being hated, especially in World of Warcraft because they'd done this multiple expansions in a row. For some reason, Pearl Abyss decided to do this war table mechanic, and I just can't wrap my head around why. It's not about instant gratification, because I like that I can send off people to a defense mission, for example, and make passive income for the camp. It's when you hit these 48-hour plus missions. As far as I'm aware, 24 hours in game is roughly 2 real world hours. So sometimes there's points where you're just waiting 4 to 6 real world hours for the completion. You can sleep through it, sort of. You're limited to 12 hours, and then once you've slept, you're told you must be fatigued before sleeping again. And that's it. It doesn't tell you what makes you fatigued. As far as I can tell, there's no visual tell for fatigueness, no stat or bar, for example. I remember one point where I wanted to sleep to pass the time, and it wouldn't let me. So I went exploring, I took over a quarry, made some attempts at a boss fight, etc. That was probably an hour, 90 minutes real world. Went back, still apparently not fatigued enough to sleep. The worst part is that the game must be open for the timer to tick. Even in Dragon Age Inquisition, that wasn't the case. It's such a strange way to design a game. I remember a few times where I went to go cook myself dinner, and I made the conscious decision to leave the game running so the timer would keep going. If Crimson Desert was still an MMO and Pearl Abyss wanted to extend playtime sessions to impress shareholders, that would make sense. But the game is single player. There's no reason to pad game time. From what I can tell, the game is on average 200 hours anyway. The game seems to be padded out just fine as is. Here's the thing. In 6 to 8 months, somewhere in that range, the most popular mod will be either reducing or removing the wait times. I don't really agree with just removing them. Like I said, I'm okay with the defense missions. It's just a bad mix of long timers and the game needing to be open for the timer to tick. Right now, on Nexus, one of the most downloaded mods is the Infinite Sleep mod, which removes the fatigue and cooldown on sleeping. The thing that really bothers me is that Pearl Abyss are seemingly aware that people don't like waiting. Because if there's an NPC that only appears at a certain time, the game lets you skip time to when the NPC is available. It's silly. I just don't understand why the game is so dragged out like this. Here's another one. As you progress the game and get the camp built out, you will eventually unlock the ability to build a ranch and a farm. Ranch for farm animals and the farm for plants. I spent the necessary resources to get them both built because, I was thinking, well, I'm 50 hours into the game, maybe the game's gonna ease off a little bit and give me a way to passively get meat in my storage chest. Nope, you have to go out and get the animals. You have to ensure they're male and female. You have to bring them all the way back to the camp, register them, wait for them to breed, feed them for the offspring to grow. You have to manually butcher them yourself. Why can't I make the comrades do this for me? Is this not why they exist? To automate the camp work? I can send off comrades to defense missions to make passive income for the camp. I can send them off to quarries, farms, blacksmiths, etc. to top off the resources of the camp in general. But I can't have them run my own farm? It's baffling. Oh, and by the way, you think the plant section of this farming stuff is better? Well, think again. You can only hold one seed at a time, so for every hole you go up to, you must open your inventory and scroll through it until you get to the seed to hold it and plant it. You have to fertilize, you have to water, you have to cut the trees down to harvest what's on them. Again, it's baffling. I don't know who this is for. Dragging a game out under the guise of realism just isn't fun, and it never will be. This game is massive. I'm at roughly 50 hours playtime and I'm still in the first region, Hanand. But with that, I feel like I've had my fill of the game. I'm sure there's plenty of things I've missed or skipped, but pretty early on I kind of clocked onto the gameplay loop and it hasn't really changed all that. It really is just outpost to outpost killing all of the enemies. There really isn't that much substance to the game. Like I said, I'm at about 50 hours. Do I really want to do this loop for another 150 or 200 hours potentially? Not really. The combat is fun. Easily the best part of the game. My favourite thing that I have done in this game is take over 2 quarries. Outposts take a while to clear regardless because of the sheer amount of enemies, but the quarries took me around 30 minutes each. I'm being very honest here. That experience is quickly rising to the top. I love this aspect of the game. This game's combat makes you feel like a medieval John Wick. I think a big problem with a lot of melee action games is that if you fight more than 3 enemies at once, you just get overwhelmed and it's really miserable. In Crimson Desert, you can be pitted against 10 or so enemies and not want to kill yourself. It's a genuine accomplishment. I think a big reason as to why this combat feels so good, at least what I've played and experienced, is that the devs seemingly followed hack and slash philosophy. In many modern action games, you have an animation for swapping weapons, one for putting the weapon away, another for getting the new one out. There's no hit stun, enemies and bosses have stagger bars. The modern action game is just really boring now. Crimson Desert really makes a 180 from this philosophy. For example, if you're attacking with a weapon, any weapon, and press triangle to attack with your fists, it is instant. You are not punished for lightly experimenting with what you can do as Cliff. One of my favourite skills in the game lets you swap between your primary and secondary weapon offensively. Press the button combo and Cliff will instantly swap weapons, and doing so will attack. It's great. However, so far, the boss fights have been really bad. They're serviceable, sure, but in terms of being fun, no. They're really not, unfortunately. I think the problem is that the boss fights don't really complement Cliff's moveset all that much. For example, I bought a skill that lets me roll over the shoulders of humanoid enemies. As you're doing this, you can press your attack button and slash their back as you land. This is great in mob fights, especially if you're getting somewhat overwhelmed. But in boss fights, the only boss this has been useful in is the Reed Devil. Every other boss fight so far has just been too big for this to work. I think my issue with this is more so what was said pre-launch. Will Powers, the community manager, said that the game and boss fights in general were being designed in such a way where everything is viable and that there's no correct way to play. Now, obviously, that's impossible. You are always going to have something more effective than anything else. That is the nature of games and balancing. However, the boss fights in this game make a majority of your moveset obsolete. Fighting the bosses feels really narrow. A great example of this is Marnie's Excavatron, which is probably one of the earliest boss fights most people will encounter. Its moveset is really simple. A simple downward strike, a dashing style attack, and an attack where it goes underground. As far as I'm aware, this boss couldn't be parried. Maybe I had the timing wrong, but in general I couldn't parry any of the simple strikes. But this boss has an attack where it goes underground. The intention here is for you to strike it with Force Palm, which is a stun move bound to clicking R3. Unless I missed something, or just didn't experiment enough, there's no other way to knock the boss out of that underground attack. Explosive arrow, maybe? I didn't test that, so I have no clue. I didn't have any explosive arrows. But this is my point. The game gives you so many tools with fun and interesting potential interactions, but then either doesn't bother exploring that or cuts them off from you. This leads to boss fights feeling boring and narrow, and the combat shining in mob fights more than boss fights. That's not necessarily a bad thing. The bad thing is that mob fights can be few and far between. You are really only fighting mob fights during outposts and quarries. Sure, you can find stray groups alongside your path as you travel, but there's just not really any point to fighting them. This is my stance on the combat. If you took this system, ripped it from this game, made specific tweaks to it, and inserted it into a game structured like DMC, Bayonetta, Darksiders, etc., it would be infinitely more engaging and enjoyable. The game is just kind of overwhelming and never once lets up. Like I said towards the start of the video, it kind of feels like the game is designed to bait out Twitter clips, if that makes sense. People being like, yo, look at the detail on this, it's so cool. And then never actually posting any gameplay or talking about the gameplay and mechanics. It kind of feels worse as well because, and I'm going to get backlash for saying this, I'm sure, the open world isn't that good. Now, put those pitchforks down. I think the content within the world is great. Puzzles are fun, if very easy. The things to find is interesting. It's the process of finding it and getting there. In general, the landscape of the world doesn't accommodate for the player to root out their journey. For me, Elden Ring is the standard for this. No matter where you are in the game, you can find somewhere to stand close by and do a 360 with the camera and find something in the distance to travel to. Then, as you're traveling, you'll find these little sub-areas, a Marika church, a crypt, a merchant, but you'll always have that thing you're traveling to in your sight. How Crimson Desert's landscape is designed pushes you to constantly be using blinding light to see highlights in the distance. It's not like you stand at the edge of the cliff and go, oh, that looks fun to explore. You just go to each blue dot you see. I had one instance of seeing something in the distance, this huge tower in the mountains. It took me a while to climb up to it, expecting an elaborate puzzle and maybe a cool reward. I get there and it's just nothing but pure disappointment. Turns out that this tower is actually a story-related area that I get to later. So the one thing you can see, which should have been a rewarding moment for climbing up to it, isn't actually rewarding at all. I don't know, the world design just never really gripped me. It's kind of hard for me to properly articulate how I mean, but looking out into the world never really made me go, holy shit, that looks cool, let's go explore that. I know this video is on the negative side, but I promise you I don't hate this game. It's just too much. The game doesn't focus on anything. It's trying to be an everything game, and because of that, the fun gets squeezed out at times. Is there fun to be had? Yes. Like I said, I find the combat and mob fights to be really good. Easily the best part of the game. But it's the in-between. The moment-to-moment gameplay. It's exhausting. Ultimately, this game isn't for me. I really thought it would be because I love open-ended games. But as I've come to learn, I have a limit to how much open-ended I can endure. Crimson Desert is very much a game you should try for yourself. My 50 hours was chock full of things I did and didn't like about the game. I think Pearl Abyss really need to work on getting a demo out. Maybe something that covers a decent chunk so the players who are undecided and have seen all these different opinions about the game can actually get knee deep into understanding what the game is and what it offers.